What's up, guys? Thanks for joining us. I just wanted to start today's training by asking you a question. Have you ever been curious about something when it comes to nutrition and just simply Googled your question and then come up with answers that automatically conflict each other, like carbs are good versus all carbs are bad, or eat in the morning versus eat in the evening, or maybe don't eat in the morning versus don't eat in the evening? What about don't have desserts or have whatever you want? Nutrition science can be really confusing, and it's really no wonder why eating well isn't always as straightforward as you would like it to be.
Yeah, so today we're going to talk about a few different reasons why nutrition science is confusing, and then hopefully give you a little bit of guidance of how you can simplify it or work through some of this confusion. So let's start way back at the start of when all this sciencey stuff began. So when you think of nutrition science, it's this small portion of a bigger study of science called chemistry. It's just basically how food interacts with your body. And so chemistry in general first started being studied way back in 1200 BC. This was a really long time ago. And it wasn't until the 1900s, which is, what's the difference? So 1200 BC.
3,700 years?
27.
2,700 years?
It's a
Math.
long time.
We're talking
3,100.
about chemistry, not
There we go.
math. Stick with us.
Okay, so chemistry started being studied in 1200 BC. 3,100 years later is when molecular biology and biochemistry started to be studied when DNA was discovered. That's a long time. But when you look at nutrition in general, it wasn't until about the 1800s that researchers discovered that your body uses fat and carbs as a source of energy. Early in the 1900s is when they started to discover different vitamins like vitamin A and B and D and all of those different things. And then it wasn't until 1970 where they discovered that there was a link between coronary heart disease and low HDL levels. So basically what we're getting at is nutrition science is kind of in its infancy stage. Like our daughter, who you may hear in the background. It's in its infancy stage. And so that's one of the reasons why it's so confusing, because we haven't had a lot of time to study this stuff.
Yeah. The second reason why it can be so confusing is that most funding these days goes to treatment of diseases rather than preventative nutrition. So most researchers, understandably so, want to solve problems like epidemics instead of how to obtain optimal health and maybe prevent these things. So according to US NIH funding, research for optimal nutrition only got $500,000 or $500,000, while diabetes and digestive and kidney diseases got 1.968 billion with a B. So $500,000, 1.968 billion with a B. Heart, lung, and blood diseases got 3.1 billion, and cancer research got 5.2 billion, again with a B.
That's
and our
crazy.
theory here is there's definitely a lot of money in treatment versus prevention and education in regards to nutrition versus disease.
Yeah. So let's talk about a third reason. So a lot of times when research projects are being done, there's got to be money to pay for them, right? They're big studies. And where does that money come from? Well, in some cases, that money comes from interested parties. What I mean by that is like a company or organization that's going to likely benefit from a specific outcome of that study. So let's just use this as an example because it's been researched in the past. If we were to ask the question, can sugary drinks lead to weight gain? 83% of studies where there is no conflict of interest, there's no company giving money to researchers to do this project, 83% of those studies would say, yes, sugary drinks can lead to weight gain. But if you're looking at a study where there is an interested party giving money to researchers to perform this study, only 16% of those studies would say, yes, that sugary drinks can lead to weight gain. What does that mean? it means when there's an interested party, a lot more often than not, the results that you get are going to benefit that interested party and may not provide accurate reporting.
For sure. Yeah. Also, reason number 4. Controlled studies are hard because it's practically impossible to isolate the effects of nutrition on other factors of your health, like whether or not you get enough sleep, whether or not you smoke, how your mental health might be, what you've done in the past for dieting, what your age is, how your physical activity level is, how fit you are, the culture that you live in, and many other factors. So that's reason number 4, why it can definitely be confusing, because it's hard to isolate one specific factor.
Mm-hmm.
Number 5, most nutrition studies are observational, meaning people who do these studies, participate in these studies, fill out a questionnaire or survey about their lifestyle and eating habits, which can be hard because I don't know about you, but it's really challenging for me to remember what I ate for breakfast today, let alone like 2 weeks ago on Wednesday. So it relies on people's memories, which can definitely be a fault. Also, there's a lot of weird and interesting, also meaningless correlations on research studies. So one research study, for example, found that organic food sales were correlated with autism. And that, if you think about that at all, it really doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it depends on the population that you're surveying. If it's small, you might get some really weird stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay, what's another reason why nutrition science is hard or it's confusing? Well, the tools that we have to actually measure how food interacts with your body, a lot of times it has limitations. So if we talk about like what you put into your body first, the food that you buy from the grocery store, a lot of it will have nutrition facts, right? Our daughter is having a blast.
She's agreeing with us.
She's agreeing. So a lot of the food that you buy will have nutrition facts on the box. There's also databases that have that same information, but the dangerous part is those food facts or food labels can be up to 50% off. So if you're eating something that you think is 200 calories, it could be 300 calories. That makes a big difference.
For sure.
Right? Because we don't absorb all the calories that we take in, right? Some days, if you have the exact same meal for 2 days straight, one day you work out, one day you don't, the amount of energy that you're actually going to absorb is going to differ. So it's not just super plain and simple. And then when we talk about the amount of energy that you expend, like as you're working out or walking or just your daily life, a lot of people will wear devices that measure that type of stuff. Those devices can be up to 45% off. So that workout that you did where your tracker said maybe you burned 500 calories, maybe you only burned like 300. That makes a huge difference too.
For sure.
So
yeah, absolutely. And another reason nutrition science can be so confusing is that what you eat now, today, doesn't affect your health long-term necessarily right away, right? Like that makes sense, but we don't typically think about it that way. So if you really wanted to study, or if someone really wanted to study if red meat causes cancer, on the burger that I ate today, someone would have to actually be living in a sealed metabolic chamber for 30 years, only eating red meat in order to really tell. And quite honestly, that probably wouldn't even really tell if red meat causes cancer, because our mental health is probably going to suffer in a metabolic chamber for 30 years. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe you'd want to sign up for that study.
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
I wouldn't. Definitely not. Okay, so just a couple more reasons. One of the big ones is you can't necessarily assume that the results of a specific study will apply to you. And the reason for that is a lot of times when they're doing research, it's easier to do it on certain populations. So what I mean by that is it might be easier for researchers to study young, healthy grad students because they're already in that setting, they're easily accessible, they've got extra time maybe that they can commit to this. Or males versus females. A lot of times nutritional research studies will study males in preference to females because females can have this menstrual cycle and these hormones that affect how your body interacts with food. So If we get rid of that factor and just study guys, it just makes it more simple. So if you're a woman, is that going to apply to you?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, maybe not.
Right.
Same goes with athletes. If you're studying exercise, athletes are experts at exercise. They spend a lot of time, elite athletes do, every day exercising. But maybe you don't have hours a day to exercise. So a study done on elite athletes may or may not apply to you and your body.
Right. And the last reason that we're going to share, number 9, in case you're taking notes, research is hard, but reporting on that research can be even harder for who's doing it, but also for who's reading it. So oftentimes who reports on research or writes the conclusions are journalists. And these journalists aren't necessarily trained in research, or they haven't done the research themselves. So the conclusions to these studies can easily be miswritten, misunderstood, over-exaggerated, and that can be really challenging, especially for a reader. So how do we figure all this out and navigate the Google searching? What I would recommend, what we would both recommend in terms of figuring out where to start and how to sift through all of these confusing reasons behind nutritional research is finding a coach who you can connect with, who can understand where you're at personally and what troubles that you're facing, and then help you to navigate working towards your goals based on those things that apply to you individually. And what we would recommend, hopefully this is obvious, but what we would recommend is finding someone who is certified and knowledgeable in an area that you need help with. So it's not just some random person who you see an Instagram ad for. Like, it's somebody who is certified, they've coached other people, they're knowledgeable, and you've had a chance to chat with them and see if they're going to be a good fit for what you need and navigating all of this crazy nutrition science. So thank you so much for listening to us today, and we just want you to remember that you're always just one step away.
See you again soon.